Welcome to Akara FQ, the home of FutureQuake Southern Hemisphere, with your hosts Andy Tate, Crusader, D-Duck, and GK Beta. Welcome to another episode of Akara FQ. This is the home of FutureQuake Southern Hemisphere. This is GK. On the line with me I have Andy Tate. G'day Andy, how are you?
Hi GK, very good, thank you. Lots of news today and really looking forward to this interview.
Absolutely. Well, tonight we welcome back William H. Kennedy to the show. Just like our audience to know, if you haven't already heard it, you can go back and listen to our last show with William, show number 54, where we gave a pretty reasonable bio on William at the beginning of that show, and I suggest you go and listen to that, and I also recommend that you visit William's website, williamhkennedy.com. There's a lot there about William and a lot of the stuff that he does, but also links to many, many other topics that may be related to this that we're going to talk about tonight, because we've invited William to come back and talk to us about the election of the new Pope, Pope Francis. So without further ado, and with our appreciation for being gracious with his time, because I know he's done a lot of shows, I welcome back to FQSH, William H. Kennedy. G'day, Bill.
GK and Andy, thank you for having me back. It's a really pivotal moment and a watershed moment in world civilization, both from a historical and a theological perspective. Now, for people who didn't notice, Pope Francis, number one, he's not really Argentinian. His parents were Italian immigrants, and he grew up speaking Italian. So he fits the criteria for St. Malachi's prophecy that we discussed about in that earlier interview about the prophecy of the popes, of him being Peter the Roman, the last pope to come before the Antichrist. Now, I could be wrong. I'm just one voice amongst many and one man in front of a computer with some theological training. That prophecy could be a bit off. But the fact that Pope Francis is a Jesuit really frightens me even more than if he actually took the name Peter the Roman. Because the Jesuits have been trying to overthrow and control the Vatican for centuries, really, but they've had a concerted effort since the end of World War II, and now they have won. They control the entire papacy. The society, and another note, and I'd be negligent if I didn't point this out. The current Pope was elected on March 13th in year 1333, or 31313, as we say it here. Now, I'm not putting a lot of numerology into this, but it is a very bizarre fact that a Jesuit would be elected on 13313, and I use the old British way of giving dates. We say 31313 here right. Here in civilization, here in the United States, unlike South Africa and Australia. But I'll save that for another day.
Sure.
But anyway, I'm bringing civilization to the savage peoples.
And we're grateful.
Thank you, William.
Oh, very good. Well, anyway, to get back to my point, an old friend of mine, Father Malachi Martin, was a Jesuit. The Society of Jesus was founded by Ignatius Loyola in the 1500s, initially to battle the Reformation, to stop Martin Luther's crusade against the church through theology. And what the Jesuits did is they picked the smartest people, the smartest boys in the Catholic schools, and recruited them. And to become a Jesuit, you have to have 2 earned PhDs, at least. Malachi Martin, my friend, he had 3 earned PhDs. Pope Francis has 2 earned PhDs, one in chemistry and one in theology. And let me tell you, chemistry is not an easy thing to get a PhD in by anyone's standard. You know, that's a tough program. So historically, they got so powerful over time that the Pope actually disbanded them in the late 1700s, and then they were allowed to reform in 1814. But the fact that they got the greatest intellectuals, and things we use every day were actually invented by the Jesuits, including the folding umbrella when it rains out. You know, the umbrella you pop open? That was invented by a Jesuit. So the Jesuits touch us all every time it rains, whether we know it or not. So they're very, very important people in world history. They were so respected in Japan and China that in the late 1500s, the Emperor of Japan gave them their own little kingdom in Japan, but they started to convert so many Japanese away from Shintoism, he wound up throwing them out of the country. The Emperor of Japan, they studied Chinese, the Jesuits, and they were allowed to wear the full robes of a Confucian scholar in the imperial court. Now, this is going into a non-Western country and not only learning their language, but learning their scholarship to the point where the Emperor of Japan gave them their own kingdom, and the Emperor of China had them as court advisors. So these are not stupid men, and they are not men to be taken lightly. They're not your average Catholic diocesan priest who may or may not be bright. This is the creme de la creme internationally of the Catholic Church. Bill Clinton here in the United States went to Georgetown University, which was run by the Jesuits, founded and started by the Jesuit order. So it's quite amazing how many people. Alfred Hitchcock went to a Jesuit grammar school, the filmmaker. Orson Welles, the filmmaker, went to a Jesuit grammar school. So these are the sorts of people they produce in their schooling system.
Right, yeah.
You know, they have a saying, the Jesuits, give me the 5-year-old boy and I will give you the man.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly, incredibly impressive in the fields of education. Now, when I was 18, I got into Boston College, which was the Jesuit university, and I chose not to go there. I chose to go to a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant school, which was, I won't say which one it was, but because I'm mad at them right now for something. But I went to what we call an old Yankee school, what we Catholics here in Massachusetts call an old Yankee school. And my parents had a Jesuit come over to our house and try and persuade me to go to the Jesuit university, claiming that the Jesuit tradition, you know, outdid Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale and all these other places that you might think of. You know, the Jesuits have universities in South Africa and Australia as well, so they touch every part of the globe. The Secretary General of the Jesuits is called the Black Pope because he wears black, and he is elected for life much like the Pope, and he is one of the 2 or 3 most important people in the Vatican. Now, on occasion, they will make a Jesuit a bishop and a cardinal, but they generally do not. This is the first Jesuit ever elected Pope in the history of the Jesuit order, which I says goes back to the 1500s. So this is a big watershed moment in world civilization that we're looking at here. Just the fact that a Jesuit is the Pope is a major, major thing. I'm personally not happy with it myself. I don't trust them. I didn't trust them when I was 18 years old, and I don't trust them now because they have taken on a clear and distinct Marxist agenda since the end of the Second World War. They were the leaders of a movement called liberation theology in the Third World, and they basically aligned themselves with Marxists.
Yes.
Some of the more famous Jesuit priests in Latin America, Nicaragua, Ernesto Coronel, for example, they called him Che Guevara with a crucifix.
Wow.
Okay? So when we're looking at a new world order, the Jesuits, in a sense, set up the platform and the ideas for it centuries ago when they went to China and India and Japan. They went Francis Xavier, one of the first Jesuits, went directly to Japan after Ignatius Loyola founded the organization. So they had a global outreach immediately. And what they wanted to do was to beat the Protestants to punch in the Third World. And they did a really great job at it because when you consider there's 1.2 billion Roman Catholics in the world, and there are probably only around 700 or 800 million Protestants. So the Jesuits' original goal of reining in Protestantism to a great extent worked, even to the point where Protestant political leaders like Bill Clinton are shaped by them.
Right, that's a good point.
Okay, you don't have to be a Catholic to be completely and utterly influenced and shaped by the Jesuits. As I said, when it rains and you use an umbrella and stay dry, you are being influenced by the Jesuits and not even realizing it. So they're in every nook and corner of our society. Now, what's frightening about Pope Francis, and I want to make it clear, he is not Pope Francis the First. He is just Pope Francis. You only refer to a pope as the first when another pope comes along and takes the same name.
Right.
So he is purely call him Pope Francis and correct anyone who calls him any differently.
Yeah.
See, I'm bringing civilization to you people. What's wrong with you?
I don't know what to do without you. Thank you so much, William.
Oh, I know. My outreach is the internet, and I'm not as extensive as the Jesuits, but I do my best.
Thank you.
And
so much.
so, what's scary is one of the cardinals I mentioned, Cardinal Peter, who's from Africa. He's an indigenous African person, what they used to call a black person, but you're not supposed to say that anymore, I guess. He, a few years ago, planned for a one World Bank. He basically wanted to take the Bureau of International Affairs in Switzerland, which manages money between nations and the world's gold, and turn it into a mega bank wherein everyone who did every transaction. So if you go down to your corner shop and buy some sweets with your bank card, or if a Saudi prince orders a Rolls Royce from England, or if Andy orders an autograph book from William H. Kennedy, she will have to pay a certain amount of money to this central World Bank, no matter what transaction you make, including cash transactions.
Wow.
He wanted a tax, justifying this by saying that this will stop some of the greed of the banksters in Wall Street who, I'm ashamed to be American to see what these banksters have done to the world economy in Wall Street, like these big firms, Lehman Brothers that collapsed, and really Americans have destroyed the world economy. But the Vatican's answer to form this central bank that they controlled is in many ways much more insidious than a free market economy where banksters are allowed sometimes to take power. A regulated economy is much more dangerous than a free market. Though free markets have their problems, as I say, and I'm not justifying what my own country on Wall Street have done to the world economy. It's disgraceful. They put greed before people. They put money before anything. When you consider that capitalism, Adam Smith, the philosopher who founded the philosophy of capitalism, said it must be guided by moral sentiment. In other words, Christian ethics. Okay? And these people have betrayed Adam Smith's vision of a capitalism with moral sentiment. Now, people can look that up for themselves. They ignored moral sentiment and have pretty much destroyed the world economy. Now, the problem is, if the Vatican gets its way and gets this new centralized bank, it won't have any more moral sentiment than the banksters. The difference being is these banksters were accountable, and a lot of them are in trouble right now. And Lehman Brothers even closed because of the evil dealings they did. But if we have this one world central bank government that the Vatican wants, it will not have moral sentiment, and it will not have to be liable to any criminal court or civil court in the world. So we're looking at something very dangerous here. Now, Pope Francis the Jesuit, he is known, he took the name Francis after Francis of Assisi, who helped the poor. He took a very benign name, and they keep saying what a humble man he is, and how he used to take the trolley to work and didn't have a limousine. Baloney. A humble Jesuit, and I'm a Roman Catholic, is a contradiction in terms. It's an oxymoron by definition. Mm-hmm. You do not earn 2 PhDs and consider yourself a humble person. It does not work that way. I don't care what your public facade is. That's absolutely, that would be like me saying I'm humble, and as, GK and Andy, I'm not. I admit that's like me going on a big, like, Dr. Stan show or this show and telling everyone how humble I am. Everyone would laugh at me. Well, I'm equally laughing at Pope Francis for his false humility.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I'd rather be known as an arrogant SOB, which I am, than false humility, because someone who practices false humility is a form of passive aggression. Okay? Their hostility towards you will come out in backstabbing.
Yeah. I'm glad you raised that point, because it was one of the questions I did have for you, because in the media here, he is being portrayed as the gracious guy who, rides a trolley bus or whatever it is to work, and, and these other things. And they really laid that on thick here today. So that was one of the questions I was going to have for you. So it was good to hear you raise that one and give us an opinion. Yeah.
Let me ask you, just the fact, the second he stepped out on that balcony at the Vatican in those white robes with all those people, if you turn the sound off, would he strike you as a humble man? Humble priests don't become Jesuits. Humble priests don't become popes. Humble priests go to inner cities and start food shelters for poor people, and you never, ever hear about them.
Yeah.
That is a humble cat. And I want to say again, I'm a graduate of the Immaculate Conception Grammar School in Everett, Massachusetts, a Catholic school, and Cardinal John Henry Newman Prep School in Boston, Massachusetts. I've had 12 years of Catholic education. Thank God not a Jesuit education.
Yeah.
But that was the foundation of my upbringing, was in the Catholic Church. As I said, my parents were deeply disappointed when I did not go to a Jesuit Catholic college, even sending Father Drinan, a prominent Boston Catholic who was a congressman, over to my house to try and persuade me to go to the Jesuit school.
Yeah.
But, his brainwashing didn't work on me, and I went to more of a Protestant school. And then for my master's degree, I went to San Francisco State University, which is a public university in California under the California State University system. However, it's named after St. Francis, San Francisco State, and I did a master's degree on St. Augustine, the Catholic saint, on time and history. So even when I went to a secular school, Catholicism was still kind of at the core of my thinking, and it is what has shaped me most, and it has shaped me more than your average Catholic because of all the Catholic schooling I've had. I mean, when I was a kid here in Massachusetts, our neighborhood didn't have a Catholic church. Our neighborhood was a Catholic church.
Yeah.
Everything we did revolved around the church. If you were in the Boy Scouts, you met at the parish hall of your Catholic church. Okay? If you were in the Girl Scouts, if you were in the 4-H club, which is an agricultural club we have here, you met at the parish hall. I was a squire of the Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic fraternal organization. So my upbringing was embedded with the Catholic Church, and I can still consider myself a Christian Catholic. I was baptized and confirmed in the Roman Catholic Church, and I do recognize that there is salvation outside of the Roman Catholic Church. I don't, damn other Bible-based Christian groups, though many of them do damn me. I don't particularly care. I'll even get emails after this show. As I said before, people send me contributions and damn me to hell.
Yeah.
And I always say them back, well, seeing as you're playing God, if I refund your money, will you refund my immortal soul, please?
Yeah.
So I don't go that way, but the core of my following is evangelicals in the United States.
Sure.
You're familiar with Radio Liberty, Dr. Stan Monteith.
Yes.
You've heard me on that program.
Yeah.
And even last night, I got these evangelical Christians calling me up and kind of goading me with nasty little snide questions. And what I was thinking afterwards, St. Paul teaches us, if you have faith to move mountains but have not love, you are as a sounding brass.
Yeah.
I don't care how deep your faith is. If you have no compassion for the next fellow, whatever you think of his ideas, if you kind of want him to go to hell, there's something seriously wrong with your theology and your psychology.
Yeah. I agree. Totally agree with you.
And I get hate mail from other Catholics who damn me to hell, who are no better.
Yeah.
Who are you to attack the Pope? Shame on you. You went to Catholic schools. Look all they did for you. They taught you how to write. They taught you how to speak. They gave you your education. They gave you the foundation to do what you're doing, and you have bitten the hand that fed you. No, I am pointing out the people who have bitten the Christianity out of the Roman Catholic Church and are spitting it in the face of the world.
Yeah.
The combination of the Jesuits and Marxism and a Jesuit Pope who is about as humble as a hand grenade, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know how the media coverage was in South Africa and Australia, but here in the States, which is still predominantly a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant country, all of the networks, the cable networks, CNN, CNBC, were showing the Vatican conclave constantly as if it were the Academy Awards and we were waiting to see who won Best Oscar for Best Film.
Oh, wow.
How was it in your part of the world? Was it the same, or did they ignore it?
I don't actually watch telly, so that probably doesn't help too much. But I don't think it was like that. That's for sure. I mean, obviously you'd get a lot on online news and stuff like that, and they certainly were portraying him as this very humble guy who basically flew economy class. I think there were other things as well that you've mentioned. So that was very much the impression that we were given, is that he truly is quite a guy, and very humble and very shy. I think very shy is also what came across.
Yeah, shy my eye, as we say in the United States.
Yeah.
Now, how was the coverage in Australia, Andy? Was it big, small, what?
No,
that you know of?
Yeah, no, in Australia.
I can tell you,
Yeah. It was constant updates. They were ready and waiting for the big announcement. It was sort of, regular updates on TV and waiting for the announcements. But once it came that full story that we've discussed about his humility and what a nice guy he is and all the rest of it. The couple of questions about his health. Was it he'd lost his...
Oh, yeah, he has one lung and all this, and he's 76 years old.
Yeah.
And
yes.
He looked pretty healthy to me. He
actually looked pretty good, yeah. Yeah, I agree, yeah. But,
I hope I look that good when I'm 76.
Yeah, if you've had... And if you've got one lung as well. So, no, he looked all right to me as well. He looked pretty happy standing up there.
I don't know if it's worth... I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but, I'm actually originally Zimbabwean, and our current president there would be Robert Mugabe, who was brought up by Jesuits. And he's a very, very proud Catholic, or at least he says so at times, So I'm just kind of drawing some parallels between the Marxist kind of ideology and the Jesuit upbringing that he would have maybe had as well. So that's just a little aside, but I just thought I should mention it.
Do you know Cecil Rhodes, the first people he brought into that part of the world were not British, they were the Jesuits?
Oh, that's very
It's the first group of people he paid to come to what we now call Zimbabwe, which he arrogantly called Rhodesia, I believe. Is that correct originally?
That's right.
Yeah, geez. I'm gonna farm Kennedy land somewhere. I don't know where, but I'm looking for some land. I got my driveway right now with some garbage barrels, but I plan on expanding it. You just wait and see.
Well, but, when you start that country, at least I can be the Prime Minister or something, because being cousins as such that we are, you know.
I'll make you one right now, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the garbage is due out. Could you fly over here and take it to the corner, please?
Last time it was the snow. Bill, last time it was the snow.
New England has the most distinct 4 seasons in the world. They really do. That's why people come here to see the leaves and the foliage, and it's quite beautiful. There are people they call when the winter comes here, they call them birds, because they fly south to Miami for the winter, and that's what I'm going to start doing next winter. I hate the snow. I just want spring, summer, fall, and summer again. I can't take the snow anymore. But back to, the sublime metaphysical and theological issues we're talking about here. I mean, just consider that, the current head of Zimbabwe, and look at all the problems Zimbabwe is having with corruption and trouble. And look at the things Bill Clinton got into. He didn't get much moral instruction sexually from the Jesuits with his Monica Lewinsky and his cigar and all that sort of filth. Mm-hmm. So there was no moral sentiment taught to him by the Jesuits in that sense. Now, from what I read about Zimbabwe, and I'll be honest with you, I was not aware the head of Zimbabwe was Jesuit trained, but it doesn't surprise me. There's all kinds of vicious problems there now, with farmers and, just people not treating each other very well. And again, it's under this insidious guise of socialism and helping other people. Mm-hmm. That's the sick part of it, It's like Joseph Stalin butchered millions of people in the name of forming an ideal socialist state. The same with Pol Pot. Pol Pot actually studied with French Jesuits. And he got the idea to, the best way to overcome petty bourgeois society by Marxist terms is to march all the petty bourgeois Marxist people and slit their throats and throw them in pits.
Wow.
So we have this evil idea which has come up in the 20th century, and I should point out Hitler and Mussolini were socialists too. They were just national socialists. They threw some racial identity on the socialism. But once you get this idea that you must destroy in order to create an ideal society, it doesn't matter what your religious or political views are. That's socialism. And the next thing that automatically follows from that is the butchering of innocent men, women, and children, which you see the farmers in Zimbabwe. I've read quite a bit about that. They're parts of Africa, they're killing the people that are growing the food to kill everybody. That's crazy. The only people who know how to grow the food. That's insane. They're pulling the rug out from under themselves again with this insidious and diabolical straight from hell idea that the only way to make things better is to strip the wealthy and the middle class of their money and redistribute it and kill anyone who you consider a threat to that redistribution. Now, I mentioned Orson Welles, who was Jesuit trained earlier. Mm-hmm. And he said a really interesting thing. He was trying to get up before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, Joseph McCarthy, the McCarthy hearings against communists. And they wouldn't let him speak because he was such an eloquent speaker. The Jesuits had trained him so well as a boy. Hmm. And what he said to a reporter in the studio head who were pro-McCarthy, they said, Orson Welles said to them, well, how do you define a communist? Well, someone who gives the bulk of their wealth to the government to redistribute. And he said, well, under our tax laws, I'm in the 86% tax bracket. So I guess by our own government, I'm 86% communist because they take it right out of my bank account. But that 14% left is Christian and capitalist. And that's a really good term. He considered himself a Christian his whole life, by the way, Orson Welles. He even did a wonderful film called The Late Great Planet Earth with Hal Lindsey you might have seen. If you haven't seen it, it's on the internet. It's about the book of Revelation and the end times, and Hal Lindsey hired a Roman Catholic, Orson Welles, to narrate it. So even Orson Welles, a lot of people who are shaped by the Catholic Church, like myself, or even by the Jesuits, you know, the problem is sometimes some logic slips in, and sometimes some reason slips in, and sometimes even with an arrogant person like me, a little bit of God's grace comes in there. Not that I deserve it. I get it whether I want it or not. And you start to really see the lack of sympathy. And I'm just going to wrap this up now because, as I say, I've been up for 24 hours yapping away, this big mouth yank on the internet, bringing civilization to the lesser English-speaking people. But just remember, just remember this current Pope Francis. He's not the humble, kind, trolley-driving man who's a little sick with one lung. He has protected pedophile priests internationally. The Jesuits are some of the worst offenders within the pedophile priest crisis. That was my first book, was called Lucifer's Law, Satanic Ritual Abuse in the Catholic Church. You can read it for free at WilliamHKennedy.com. Do not be fooled by the media coverage of this so-called humble man. Now, one thing I said on Dr. Stan's show, I always evoke a certain biblical passage that no one ever seems to use. Be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. That is what Jesus commands us to do. That is a command. So all these emails I get about the end of the world and, you know, the Left Behind series, post-tribulation, tribulation this, tribulation that. Well, get your spiritual life in order, your financial life in order, and be of good cheer, for Jesus overcame the world for us. It's not anything we've done. It was done for us over 2,000 years ago, and that's really what to focus on. If you drop dead today and the Antichrist shows up tomorrow afternoon at Andy's house, it's not going to really do the person that dropped dead any good, you know, because you will face your Maker. That's the point where you will face your Maker, and you will face your Maker alone. The Pope won't be there. I won't be there. GK won't be there. Andy won't be there. Bill Clinton won't be there. I definitely know he won't be there. But just keep that in mind. It's you and your Maker and your relationship. As I say, get your spiritual, financial, and family life in order. Tell a relative that you're maybe on bad terms with that you love them. Help your neighbor who's an old lady in with those bag of groceries. Don't just look the other way. You know, let someone, talk to someone who seems down and losing their faith. You know, counsel the doubtful. Do good works. Volunteer in a homeless shelter. Do something of value, because when you have grace and know that you are going to heaven, then it's perfectly normal for good works to follow. Good works in and of themselves won't get you anywhere, but grace and the knowledge that God is there for you, good works will spontaneously flow from that. And focus on those things, and don't be too caught up in, the end of the world, blah, blah. And I know there's a lot of problems in the world. North Korea is saber rattling, and the Syrians have chemical bombs. But there again, all those things are secondary. Get your own spiritual, financial life in order, and, maybe have a little sense of Christian community, and be nice to your neighbor, and cordial to your neighbor, and just, not like this morning I ran out to get something, and someone I knew strutted right by me, didn't look at me, had his earphones in, and I might as well have been on Mars. Let's get away from that. Let's be friendly to our neighbor. Let's invite them into our Christian world and our Christian beliefs, and if they don't want to, if they yell at you or mistreat you, destroy them with the deepest kindness you can find in your heart. And that will really make their lives better and your lives better.
I just wanted to say, you preach better than a lot of Protestants I've heard, mate. That was a very good message, and I seriously appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. But before you go, have you got time for a short joke?
Sure.
Okay, so there's a guy in Boston. He's hanging over the edge of a building, and he's about to jump. And this good Irish cop rushes up to him and says, "Hey, don't jump, don't jump. Think of your dear old mother." And the guy looks at the cop and he says, "I don't have one. I'm going to jump." The cop says, "Well, think of your dear father." And he says, "Hey, I haven't got a father." So the cop's scratching his head. He said, "Well, what about your wife?" And the guy says, "I haven't got a wife." Desperately, the cop says, "Hey, think of the Blessed Virgin." And the guy says, "Who?" So the cop says, "Jump, you misbegotten Protestant so-and-so."
I have to give you another Boston Irish joke since you brought that one up. I have to. Okay, Andy, I'm sorry. GK started this. This Protestant is running for governor of Massachusetts, and he's going door to door, and he knocks on the door, and this Irish redheaded old woman opens the door and says, "Can I help you?" And he says, "Well, yes, ma'am. I'm John Smith. I'm running for governor, and I'd like your vote." And she says, "Hey, wait a minute. Are you the John Smith that has a brother that works at the State House?" "Oh, no, that's not me." "So wait a minute. Doesn't your sister work in the City Hall?" And he says, "No, ma'am, that's not me. That's nepotism. I wouldn't do that." And the Irish lady says, "Well, I'm not going to vote for you." He says, "Well, why?" He says, "Well, you son of a... if you won't help your own family, then I have no use for you."
There you go.
Okay, that was GK's fault, Andy, bringing up Boston Irish.
He will then paste it later. Thank you so much, William.
Listen, Andy and GK, I gotta go take the garbage out back to the mundane world and catch a little bit of sleep. I gotta go on a show in about 6 hours, and I've been talking 24 hours. Thank God Yanks never shut up and wear polyester suits, or I'd be no good. But thanks for having me on the show, and God bless everyone in South Africa and Australia, and let's keep the good fight and the good cause going, and be of good cheer, for Jesus has overcome the world.
Thank you so much, William. We really appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and come back again.
God bless, Bill. Thanks very much.
Okay, goodbye for now. Have a good day. See you.
Thanks so much.
Have a good rest. Go well.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed our show. You can find us on the web at www.fqsouthafrica.co.za. You can also join us at our Facebook group page. Just go to Facebook and search for FutureQuake Southern Hemisphere. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions, you can contact us by email. Our address is mail@fqsouthafrica.co.za. That's mail@fqsouthafrica.co.za.